It's a memory that I'll not soon forget. It was a sunny Sunday morning, and I was sitting in my grandparents' house. The smell of breakfast filled the air. Italian toast, hot coffee, bacon and eggs. And I sat across the table from my grandfather, who was reading the Sunday Dispatch. And as I looked up from my meal, and he looked up from his, a look of dismay came over his face. And I looked down at the newspaper, and I read a headline about a local school that was significantly cutting their funding for their local arts program. Sadly, this wouldn't be the first headline to that effect that I would see. Now, as an artist, a musician, a student, and a prospective art teacher, you can imagine that this is a subject that hits very close to home for me. My very career and the things that I love are threatened by the tragic disregard for arts funding in public schooling today. Over the past decade, the arts programs throughout the country have suffered greatly. This has been noted in every state, from New York to California, in every town, in every city, in every demographic, be it rural, suburban, or urban. For some of us, this hits very close to home. This has been very notable in nearby Philadelphia, where in 2006, a study conducted by an educational reform committee revealed that over half of the 268 schools in Philadelphia lacked either a full-time art or music education teacher. Now, this shouldn't come as a shock to you, although for many of you it will. I wish that I could count the amount of local late-night news programs that I've watched where they casually announce the demise of yet another art education program in a public school. Now, the gravity of this issue was brought to light very much so in 2004, the end of the 2004 fiscal year, where 36 out of 57 United States and territories in the U.S. Expected they would cut around $75 million from various cultural investments, including arts education. Now, there's no denying that there are a host of issues with the public education system and throughout our country. But I think that before we start tackling all of these, we should effectively and accurately identify the problem here before we can suggest or even implement any solutions. I suggest that we start on the lowest level, the level that's most obvious and most out there for the public eye, the local public schooling system. Now, as I noted before, thousands upon thousands of local schools are cutting funding and cutting budgets in their arts education programs. This translates to books. This translates to art supplies, to musical instruments. And this can be greatly attributed to the shift in focus from a more generalized education to one that focuses more specifically on the core subjects of math and language arts. This shift is due in part to the recent edition of the No Child Left Behind Act, and to an increased enthusiasm, subsequent enthusiasm in standardized testing, which, as you all know, focus only on the core subjects of mathematics and language arts, and not on the visual and performing arts, which I'll argue are equally as important. This has forced a lot of local Pennsylvania schools, including my own high school, to divert funds into their core subjects so as to bolster their test scores. Now, while this increased attention and, of course, this extra funding has gone a long way to bolster the test scores and the performance and the competence in these subjects, it's completely undercut the funding and attention that the arts deserve. This has manifested itself in a number of ways. It's no longer simply text, no longer supplies. It's no longer your musical books and instruments. At this point, it's gotten so severe that many schools, especially in rural and urban districts, have been forced to cut entire classes, jobs, and often entire programs from their schooling systems. Now, the next logical issue that we need to deal with is that of funding on the state and federal level. In a local educational journal, reformer Sandra Glenn of Philadelphia makes it very clear that a number of schools and all districts in Pennsylvania lack adequate structural funding to provide the well-rounded education that all reformers and even most politicians are admittedly seeking. Put bluntly, the obscene budget cuts in recent years have crippled the educative process. Now, as I composed this speech, one of the biggest questions, one of the biggest issues that I faced was asking myself, what can I do, what can we do as students and as citizens to confront this problem that has gone so long ignorant in the public eye? Now, I found that the answer was in my question. This problem needs to be brought to light before a solution can be implemented. By bringing this issue to the forefront of the collective public mind, we can bring it to those who do have the ability to make a serious change. Now, let's be honest, none of us are administrators, none of us are principals or House representatives, at least not that I know of. So how do we make our voices heard? Well, there are a number of organizations that are devoted exclusively to dealing with this subject, and they've made an enormous amount of headway simply by creating petitions and urging individuals to send letters to their local authorities that do have the power to make these changes. Now, enough people voice their concern. This problem can't go ignored any longer. In these letters, we should push for greater general funding, effectively enlarging the pool from which all education funding is drained. Furthermore, we should urge local politicians to develop legislation that will protect and bolster the arts. If these goals are met, the proliferation of art in our public schools and in our society is inevitable. Envision a world, if you will, more richly immersed in the arts. The intrinsic value of the arts is undeniable. They are a source of inspiration, they are an outlet for self-expression, and they are an integral part of who we are as human beings. How then do we propose that we remove them from our public schooling systems? Philadelphia School Reform Commissioner James Gallagher is quoted as saying, "Nobody can demean the value of having arts flourish in public schools." I'm sure you'll all agree with me, and even for the most cynical of politicians, there is reason to reinstate the arts and to bring them back to their former glory. For those so immensely concerned with test scores and performance ratings, let the record reflect that in an individual study conducted in a school district in the United States, students involved in the music education program scored an average of 40 points higher on the SATs. In a separate test conducted by a neurological division in a local university, students who took piano and math courses scored an average of 27% higher than students who took just the math courses. It was the same curriculum and same general body of students. This exhibits an undeniable correlation between the arts and general education. Commissioner Glenn went further to say that music and art education are a fundamental part of the educative process. Now, a minute ago, I described the world to you, a wonderful place, a place where the arts took a forefront in not only the public schooling system, but in society as a whole. And again, I urge you to action. You can write a letter. You can join a nonprofit organization if you really want, or you can keep it as simple as telling a friend. The level of your devotion and dedication to this plight is really up to you. I'm not asking you to go out there with signs, with join big protests. But currently, I'm writing a letter to my local high school administration, voicing my own concerns for this issue. It may cost me 42 cents to mail, as stamps are going out, and it may take me a couple minutes out of my day. But the fact is that any action can spark a priceless change that will last a lifetime. Thank you.